Yes, so we are live. We are back. And we are here for our, I think it's our second round of interviews for the day. And we're just on a lunch break. And I have Deb and Sabri. They're joining me. So how are you, Deb?
I'm very well, thank you. Too much fun.
Good. And how are you doing, Sabri?
I'm feeling great, and I hope we will finish this interview on time because I have to run for my weekly review today on Friday.
Oh, and you're going to do your weekly review at the GTD-Summit, really? Raise your hand. Raise your hand. Who? I couldn't raise my hand this morning, by the way, when they ask about raise your hand if you do your weekly review every week. And Catherine and I were sitting next to each other, and we didn't raise our hands, and we're like, oh, hopefully no one's watching, because we're not raising our hands.
Raise your hand, raise your hand.
I want them to do that.
All right, so we have, I think, about 10 or 15 minutes to have different conversations around different themes. So I would love to hear from either of you. What are you grateful for? When you think of gratitude and when you think what you're grateful for, what opens your heart, what comes to mind?
There are two things. One of them is my husband, David, who is just an amazing, amazing man. We've been married for 37 years. I've only been home for 10 of them because I travel for business
No wonder
a lot.
it's an amazing marriage. Sorry. Oops.
It's like a 10-year date, it's kind of like that. But he's a very generous spirit, and he helps me do the things that are important that I love to do, and he doesn't ever stand in the way of that. And he also makes me laugh every day. And then the other thing I'm always grateful for is breakfast, and I will tell you why.
Yes, why?
There is an older comedian from years ago named George Burns from America, and he used to say that he would get up in the morning, he would read the obituary page, and if his name wasn't in there, he would have breakfast. So every morning I get to have breakfast. I am very grateful.
Yeah.
Because my name's not in the paper, so I'm above ground. It's a good day.
Good.
What I'm grateful for. So this is part of my weekly review, do you know? Because I added a category, grateful, and every Friday I go through my weekly review, and at the end of the methodological review,
Sure.
of course, I add grateful. There is nothing in it. I just review the week and say, what are you grateful for? So I'm not thinking about what did you not achieve this week. However, the different way around. So what did I achieve? So to get the positivity, which I mentioned in the keynote earlier. First of all, let's say universally, I'm grateful to have a family where everybody is healthy. I think this is the first thing, and we shouldn't forget. And that I can feel love and give love and all that things which are necessary in life and happiness. And when I look it's not my profession. If I look at what I'm doing at work, is that I can live what I want to do. So I can do what I want, and I have a choice every day. And this is what I'm really grateful for. I want to work with the client, I work with him. I don't want to work with the client, I don't work with him. And I want to work for a bunch of money, I do it. Somebody comes to me and says, listen, I can't pay that, but I want this. I can decide to do it or not. And this means autonomy. Do you say that in English in the same way? So
yes.
I'm grateful for having for me, the highest level of autonomy. This is one of the reasons why I left the live as an employee. So this is really the two things I'm really grateful for. Yeah. Thank you for the question.
And I think there is a correlation, no question, as you've been speaking of happiness, and I think high-performing teams and your age there for happiness with gratitude.
Yes.
I think as we focus on gratitude and we focus on what we're grateful for, there is an automatic happiness that at least fills me, and I'm sure you've experienced. Have you ever done any work with teams or with cultures where there's been a focus on gratitude, maybe with different words, because it might not be the corporate speak, and what the effects of that has been?
Well, yes, but not without
Right.
wording.
I understand that.
But more about when we bring a new group of people together who are going to work together on a particular initiative, we give everybody index cards. And if there are 6 people on that team, everybody has 5 cards. And the first round of cards is, what is it you really are grateful for about that team member that they're going to bring to the team? We're so excited to work with someone who's that well organized or brings that kind of expertise to this initiative. So you write one card for every person on the team, that all gets passed around and read. And then the second round of cards is, what do I need from you as a member of this team? How can you help me do my best on this team? So it's just these rounds of index cards, but it really starts with how much I appreciate the expertise you bring or the effort that you bring or whatever it happens to be.
Which is an exercise in gratitude.
Exactly, exactly. It gets people focused, I think, in the right way.
Yeah.
As opposed to, I don't know these people, I'm nervous about working with these people. It kind of gives them a way to get to know each other right away. And if they do know each other, to appreciate something about that other person right up front. So I think it sets a tone that I'm sure you said as well.
I think gratitude is an important ingredient for humbleness.
Yes.
When you are able to show gratitude, you can be humble, or you should be humble. And the phenomenon I observe in my work with teams is that sometimes there is a mismatch between happiness and a delightful moment. So it's like people strive to be happy, and there is a moment of delight, but it's only a short moment. And the sequence of delightful moments is kind of an addiction. So for example, people who are consuming, they need to consume more and more and more and more to have these moments of delight, which they falsely see as moments of happiness. And real happiness means that I'm in an inner state. This is what I meant with inner clarity in my keynote, where they have an inner state of clarity and a feeling of happiness, and not only a cortisol shot, which you have when you consume something. And I think one of the major phenomena in our world today is that people are moving more towards quantitative things than qualitative things. And I think there is a big risk in a misperception between happiness and delightful moments.
Well, thank God we don't work for a consumer products company. They wouldn't be liking our shtick.
But I think it also takes us back to what Marshall was talking about. It's a choice.
Yes.
You choose that attitude when you get up, or you choose that attitude when you go to a meeting, or when you're going to engage in something. You make the choice that no matter what happens, if nobody else in the room is going to be happy, I'm going to be happy.
Oh, totally, yes.
And you can only choose it for yourself. But I strongly believe that there are wonderful things around us that give us those sources, but it's your internal choice. Yeah. You can be happy or you can be upset about something. Take your pick. So.
I have found it for me that it's an automatic, as a trick. It puts me very quickly into a state of happiness just the moment I focus on what I'm grateful for either having or not having. Because I think sometimes it's so easy to just be grateful for what we have that we don't realize that we can also be grateful for what we don't have. You know, I'm grateful my flight it's not further delayed. I'm grateful I am not sitting in the middle seat, but on the aisle seat, even though I wanted the window seat. So it automatically changes that state of being, such simple exercise.
I love that exercise because when you practice that exercise, you get less stress for the minor things.
Correct.
And you focus more on the major things. I think this is an important state that you say, you know, I'm sitting in the middle seat, I don't care. You know, this is different than saying, oh no, still again, I don't sit in the middle seat.
Right.
Yeah, there is a chance of 2 out of 6 that you sit in the middle seat of this line.
Yes.
And I think you should not spend your energy with thinking about the minor things rather than focusing on the big things. So if you focus on the big things, you get energies and ideas for the big things and not the other way around.
And it also makes me wonder why everybody who enters an airport, they all of a sudden forget every manner their mother ever taught them.
Completely. They lose perspective.
What is that? Yeah, it is a loss of perspective. And I will see perfectly healthy people practically running down a poor 80-year-old woman on the jetway as if the plane is going to leave without them. It's not going to leave without them. Yeah. Help her out, you know? Yeah. But it's an interesting phenomenon. I think there's that sense of I have to rush or I have to get someplace and they miss.
I would love to share an experience from last night.
One last minute.
One last minute, okay. Yeah. I had a delightful moment, not happiness, but a delightful moment. At the bar, a guy talked to me and said, what is this GTD-Summit? I said, this GTD, getting things done, self-management, blah, 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 blah. He said, what do I learn there? You are practicing there? Yeah, I'm a coach there. What do you learn there? I said, order a bottle of wine, I'll tell you. And he said, give me the one essence thing. What was one of the most advantageous things for you since you learned GTD? I said, the essence for me is that I learned that I never let other people's lack of planning become my bullshit. Mm-hmm. And he said, give me a business card.
Good. There you go. Well, I am grateful to the two of you and your time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And our time has come to an end. And we will be back in 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna-Maria.
Hello again, everyone. We're back from our GTD Summit speakers on a break to interview some of our GTD Summit speakers. This time we have Major General Randy Fullhart. He winked at me because I caught the major part in front of that. And Stephanie Ward. So my challenge here is how to come up with some kind of questions, open-ended questions that'll bring out some commonality. One of the things I've thought of so far is that both of you know about the importance of story and that each one of us has a story. In your presentation a little while ago, you were talking about look around, meet these other people. They all have a story to tell. There's something about them that you don't know yet that will be of value if you talk to them. So, and last night at dinner, I heard you talking to somebody about marketing, and what I got from part of that was there's story involved. And so how about that? Start out with, how do you relate to the idea of story and telling a story?
That's a great question. Storytelling, is very popular these days. Everyone's talking about it. You can use it with anything, really. I think genuine stories people connect with because it's hopefully a true situation that someone's experienced. And there's a lesson in that. It's so much easier to remember stories and more fun to engage with people when you hear stories. So in marketing and with anything, really, it's a matter of connecting with people. I say you just use that word if you don't like the word marketing, connecting, because that's all it is. And then listening, of course. We've heard a lot about that during the summit, actually listening. And then sharing something from your heart. It doesn't mean you have to spill your guts or tell something just to look vulnerable, but speaking from your heart and being honest about it, I think, is the key to true storytelling.
I think if you look back at even the history of mankind, it is a story that began with people literally, as we talked about here, sitting around a fire, learning from their elders, learning from their family members, just how to survive. And then we would then go from there to cave dwelling drawings on the walls, but that wasn't portable. And so until we finally got paper and the ability to write our stories down and then to have places where they were kept and shared with people called libraries. And now we do that electronically, and it makes all of our stories much more accessible. And the challenge now is to pick the stories to which we will take our narrow lens and focus on, and how to make meaning out of those and turn those into our life gifts to give to others.
The other thing that I thought of that for me at least, rings in both of what you talk about is the idea that we all have something great we can accomplish, and the challenge is to identify what it is and then be able to start moving toward that. You talked about this some in your presentation this morning. It was very inspiring, including the video clips. And anything else you want to say about how do you identify what your thing is to accomplish? And how did you go about that? Any advice on that for others?
Well, GTD and the natural planning process starts with sort of envisioning what you want things to look like when they're done, which then leads to what are all the things that you have to do in order to get there. And that's both, I think, in terms of what you visually think something will look like, but I think also increasingly what you will feel like when it's done well. And so that feeling part, I think, is what fuels you towards the vision of what you hope to see when you're done. And I think what's part of what the value of getting things done is is that it provides a mechanism for ordering your thinking, asking the right questions in the right order, and then putting down what are the next actions, what are the next steps to make that vision a reality.
And last night, again, I saw you helping somebody get to what's the story you want to tell. So how do you get that out of your clients, especially if they're a little fuzzy on how to accomplish it? They just know they have something to share.
Right. Well, you know, they say it's always easier to have someone help you do it, telling your own story. Sometimes it's hard, you can't see it, you're so close to it. So I think it really is helpful to talk with someone about it, and sometimes it's just a matter of that person telling the story, and then you hear something, and you're like, tell me more about that. And they're like, oh, they think, well, that's so obvious, but those are the things we've heard today that are right in front of us, if we just look and to see what's right in front of us. And then it's also a matter of just being able to clarify it into simple words and say it in a way that people can understand, so get rid of all the jargon and those kind of things. But what I find with your question here was about how do people find what is that thing? I think we do actually most of the time know it. We've thought about it, and it's just a matter of having the courage to go for it. And that's part of my mission, and what I'm trying to do is let people know they can make a living doing what they love, even if they don't know how to get the word out. And that's where I come in to help them with the marketing in a way that's not creepy for them.
Ah, okay. Well, you both have a way of inspiring people and getting them to discover what motivates them, what really drives them, even if they don't know it consciously yet. I mean, all right. What else would you like to share? What else?
I think one of the takeaway messages from this entire conference, and for those who are watching, is that first, anything is possible. Even the most complex thing in the world, I usually use the example of the Great Wall of China, it's still one brick at a time. And so it's a matter of, so somebody's going to have to move the first one, and then somebody's going to move the second one, and eventually, oh my gosh, you got a wall.
And you can see it from space.
And you can see it from space, and people pay a lot of money just to go stand on it. So I think the point is don't limit your thinking by what you think is possible. Think about what is needed, and then work backwards from there, and it will become possible.
Great advice.
Yeah, I mean, similar to that, it has to do with not being afraid. That's the main thing that is stopping people is fear. And I think it's just a matter, life is short. We've talked a lot about that too. And what do you want to do with your time here on this planet? So if you have something in your mind, an idea, and an initiative, use GTD to figure out how to make it happen, but just be willing to take that first step and have the courage to move forward and reach out and make it happen.
Interesting. That's one of the first times I've heard somebody mention, how do I use GTD to cope with something as common as fear? Because we're all afraid to live that bigger life, and it's great to hear that GTD can help take steps toward that. And yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for talking with us here. Anything else either of you want to say as a parting bit of advice, a nugget of wisdom, anything like that?
Well, I would just say to the audience out there, you're in good company. Share the message, share what this can make possible, and after that, just enjoy your life.
That's great advice. Absolutely. This crowd here, this audience is phenomenal. I mean, the energy in the room, you just feel like there's a vibe of kindness and generosity and openness, and I'm just so happy to be here. And besides taking action on the thing that you want to take action on, the thing you want to do is just connect with people. Be willing to connect and be helpful and indeed have fun and enjoy the present, because that's all there is.
Yeah, it is quite a diverse group of people. Very surprising. Well, thank you both for taking time out of your lunch. I don't think you've either had lunch yet, so time to go get something to eat and meet some new people and hear some new stories.
Super.
Thank you. And we'll be back later on at our other break with more interviews.
Hello. Well, welcome back. I have a interesting now couple that I will be interviewing, for which I'm very excited about.
We're a couple now.
Wrong English. I'm sorry. I'm very happy for the next two guests that I'll be interviewing, Stephen and Mark. So, hello, Stephen.
Hi, Lydia.
It's a great pleasure to meet you. It's first time we're meeting, I think,
Yep.
seeing, right?
Yep.
I have not seen you before.
Nope.
Or met you before. So thank you. Thank you for making it all the way from where? You were sharing with me.
Curaçao.
Oh.
We're actually neighbors.
We are neighbors.
Yeah.
And there's a Curaçao Amsterdam direct flight because it's a KLM destination.
That's
so
true.
It's an easy flight, yeah?
That's true.
Are you originally from the Netherlands?
No, I'm originally from Suriname.
Oh, even neighbors as well because I grew up in Venezuela.
Ah, there you go.
You've been following me, I think.
I have. On purpose. That's why I'm here.
This is why we're together now in this interview.
Yeah.
Now everything is coming together.
See?
Well, thank you. Thank you for joining us and for your time.
Thank you.
And we also have our next guest, Mark. Hello, Mark. How are you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and I actually know Mark, as opposed to not knowing Stephen. It's been how many years now? Maybe
Oh, boy.
6,
I think
5?
about 5 or 6 years since we met in Chicago.
Yeah.
So not quite as far, but yeah.
Yeah, we met in Chicago. We're in a certification where Mark's journey started and got him to where we are now.
Yep.
How about you tell us a little bit about this great project that you've been an co-author of?
Sure. Kind of the story really is that I came across GTD little over 10 years ago, and immediately the response that I had was what most people have is, why didn't I have this earlier? How would my life have been different had I had this when I was younger? So I'm a teacher in the public school system in the States, and so immediately my heart went to, I have to pass this along. I have to pay this forward. It was almost not even optional for me. Like it was such a deep calling for me that I had to make that happen. So I reached out to David and Catherine and just said, do you have anything for kids? Do you have any materials that are ready? And it was in a someday maybe category for them. And so I was really kind of the annoying man, just kept knocking on the door, Thank you. And came to Chicago for a certification training, not with the desire to teach adults, but to better equip myself to equip kids. That journey has just continued, and I kept knocking on doors, and Mike Williams and I connected and hit it off, had a great friendship, and he and David and I undertook the process of writing Getting Things Done for Teens, which has now been published. It is nearly worldwide. We just got a copy of the Chinese version today, which was just fantastic, and I'm blessed to be here today to be able to share.
And I think it's just the beginning. I think it has just taken off. Very good. Yeah.
Thank you.
Excellent. Well, let's talk about something that is fascinating to me, which is gratitude and what we're grateful for, or what are you grateful for? So, if you don't mind me checking with you, what are you grateful for, or what's gratitude for you, Mark, or what opens your heart when you bring yourself to that place of gratitude?
Wow, I could go a lot of different directions with that. I think, as I'm here today, just in this setting, just grateful. I'm going to choke up. Grateful for people who have been open, been supportive.
Mm-hmm.
The first people to come to mind are David and Catherine, that they opened the door and gave opportunity, gave blessing for people to take risks, try things. I'm grateful, I mentioned to you earlier, for our interaction and just all of the people along the way that have been, just in this particular journey, supportive and encouraging. And then I think bigger picture, grateful for family, grateful for all the friends and relationships. So every time that I do that process, it always comes down to people. Nothing material, nothing about accomplishments, nothing about career, nothing about anything, just about people and the influence that has on my everyday being and who I am and who I feel called to be.
No, thank you. And Stephen?
So, I listened to one of the talks today by the General Major, And he mentioned something I'll probably never forget. I won't say it the same way he did, but everything in your life happens for now.
Yes.
And I honestly, having been here now for nearly 2 days, I'm actually understanding a lot more how this world works that we consider to be our universe. And I'm just very grateful for being able to start to understand what every single thing in my life is leading up to. And it sounds very spiritual, very weird, but for some reason, if you have a clear mind, if you really meditate, take a step further, you all of a sudden start to realize that the world is a very different place than what we are taught that it is. And every single thing that we may consider to have been bad or good, it's just a story. It's not true. It's how we experience that world. But it's all for this moment. It's all for being able to live and understand this moment. And so, sorry to be metaphysical on you.
Oh no, I'm loving it. Thank you.
But this is the gratitude, and you know, folks like David and Catherine who've come into my life for absolutely, you know, I have no idea how they actually showed up. They're helping me, like they just helped, you know, like you mentioned. Help me to find my purpose, help me to endorse my book, get other people to endorse my book, give me the stage, and hi Rick, on where we're on. And I'm just so thankful to so many people that I'm even meeting today and yesterday, just wonderful vibe, wonderful people. So just, you know, thankful for life really. It just sounds corny, but yeah, things just go that way.
Yeah. Well, I find myself that as soon as we're able to move to that place of gratitude, the whole perspective of no matter what the situation is changes.
Yeah.
It's one of the most powerful tricks that we keep remembering to exercise, can put us in a very different place. And then, of course, if we tie it with GTD, and like you were saying, you know, that the value of clear space or value of clear mind, that just enables us to much quicker get to that gratitude. Because sometimes, you know, it's the noise that doesn't let us see what is totally and completely in front of us.
It's this distraction, right? And I think we're all so busy in life.
Yeah.
And we're also distracted that it's actually those moments of silence where I think we actually start to realize who we are, and especially who we are not. And that's part of the speech I'm going to have. But
wonderful.
Yeah. Understanding who we're not is actually a lot more important than trying to understand who we are.
Which is a lot where the focus is placed. Who are you? Why are you here? What's your purpose? And then it's like the opposite as I'm hearing you.
Yeah.
It's as powerful, if not more.
Yeah.
Well, that's another interesting discussion that I want you to think about, because many of the things that I do as an exercise is I go, not only what I'm grateful for what I have, but for what I don't have. For example, I am grateful that if I'm sitting in a middle seat, I'm getting to go home. Instead of being, you know, in an airplane, instead of being upset because I didn't get the aisle seat or the window seat. So do you have any experiences of examples of things like that in your life where you were able to change that perspective to bring in that gratitude, even though it wasn't, let's say, in quotes, your preference?
Well, that's a very interesting question, especially I've always been known as a very negative person for most of my life. I've always seen the darker side of things instead of the lightest part of things. Only when I started to meditate did I understand there are very different ways to view the world. There's just not one perspective. There are multiple perspectives. And right now, I start to become, you know, thankful for everything, the things that I didn't get,
right,
and the things that I got, because everything happens for a reason. Everything puts us in a position in where we are now, and now is a perfect time. We don't often think about it as being perfect. We're always trying to strive for the grass is greener on the other side. But the reality is, this moment right now is perfect. And the stuff I didn't get also led me to this place. And there was a guy, I'm not sure what his, Mo Gadat, I'm not sure if I pronounced the name right. He wrote The Logic of Happiness. And he spoke about his son dying when I think he was 21. And instead of saying, oh no, my son died, he said, my son lived for 21 years.
Oh, I love that.
Right? It's that changing of the perspective, changing of how we view the world and how that affects us and how that affects our emotions. But you can only get to that stage if you're able to let go of your own perceptions about how the world works.
Of course.
So.
Yeah.
Wow, I don't know if I can top that. I think what I'm reminded of is my faith is very important to me. I think of a Proverb 16 that just talks about that the thing that and GTD has been really influential for this is I don't need to worry about tomorrow. I just need to be present in the day for whatever comes, and I need to hold tightly to whatever actions I'm given today to take, to do those with everything that I have, with all that I have, and not hold too tightly on to the future or where that leads, but just remember that to be in the moment, to be present, to be aware, to see, and to be ready for whatever that day will hold. And that's one of the themes that I've heard, is just the clear space for me is not about what I can do in that clear space necessarily, but what can I see, what's around me, who is around me, what opportunities are here. And so I'm grateful for not feeling the pressure to hold on to, hold tightly to a vision or a direction, but to be able to stay present in the moment and just be where I am, and whatever comes my way, to have the clarity to take action and move on it. So I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for that loose vision that I can hold, and yet in the day move towards whatever that might be, and then reevaluate and see what's changed in the landscape.
Great. So we are getting towards the end of our time here. What would you like the folks to know, perhaps about your work or about you, or about what delights you, what brings joy to your life, what brings a smile to your face? I mean, how can they get to know you better? What would you like to share with us?
I think for me, the thing that I'm most passionate about, the thing that brings me the most joy, is something that I feel like I missed as a child, which was just exploring and understanding the sparks that give you passion, that put you in your element, that help you to feel alive. And so my work is really about how do you build capacity in young people to reduce the noise, to strip out distraction. I think in space right now, kids choose distraction. And without space, without boredom, we're losing some of that opportunity for sparks and passions to grow. And so my work is really all about equipping young people to create the conditions to find those sparks, to find those things that bring you joy, that ignite you, and then unleash them towards that. Because it's going to be a noisy journey, and it's very easy to get off that track or never find what that is. And so that's my number one passion, is to build capacity in young people to find those things, to truly find those things that bring us joy.
I think he just said what I was going to say, so we can just go.
Okay, we're done. See you. No.
I grew up in a very poor country.
Yes.
And what always fascinated me was what drives human behavior, what triggers people to do what they do, feel what they feel. And I'm 42 years old now. I think for about 30 of my years, I've been on that journey. And right now, what is driving me, what makes me happy, is to share at least my perspective of what I've come to understand. And what I've come to understand is that the I that we consider to be my person is just a story. Now, we can choose to take on a negative story or a positive story. And going back to what you said about children, where I'm particularly focused on is education, where we re-engineer education away from the idea of you need to be something, so I'm going to give you a grade. You need to finish this test and you'll be someone someday. Instead of, look, you are already who you are. What now we need to do is ensure that you are ignited. What is your talent? What is your gift? Why were you put on this planet? And how can we get it out of you to actually be your own potential? That's what drives me. And that's what I'm going to, talk about today on stage as well.
Wow, I can't wait to hear.
Thanks.
So wonderful. Well, what can I say? I would love to spend more time because I'm completely delighted and I have more questions as you're speaking, but everything comes to an end. I do want to say something about something that you share, Mark, and it's that value of boredom, which I'm sure also, Stephen, you've been looking at, because we've been we're needing to be stimulated, it seems like all the time, these days, and there's a lot coming back on boredom. And as I was a child, I had a lot of bore moments, bore, but which lead to so many other wonderful discoveries. So I just think there's been a very unique theme throughout this conference, right, around quietness and solitude and introspection, and which is really what GTD is about, or enables.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, so well, thank you.
Well, thanks for having us.
I'm grateful to you, the two of you. I'm overjoyed by everything I've received throughout these 2 days and our time during the interview. So
it was a pleasure.
Don't miss the next afternoon where they will be having their presentations, and we will see you later in our next round of interviews. Bye-bye. Thanks.